Professors Amy Jill Levine and Mark Zvi Brettler, authors of the recent book, The Bible With and Without Jesus, have argued that it's time to stop using the term Judeo-Christian. I agree. They argue that the term Judeo-Christian overly simplifies the similarities between two unique faith traditions, not to mention deliberately excluding Islam from the notion of quote-unquote shared Western values. This week's Parsha includes no Jews and no Christians. No Christians because, well, they come later. No Jews because the term is an anachronism, really. In Torah, our people are called Hebrews. In Torah and Tanakh, they're called Israelites. We become Jews, actually, around the time of the festival that we'll celebrate in just a few weeks, Hanukkah, which is a post-biblical holiday. But our interpretive tradition does see Jews and Christians in the text. In fact, in our very parashah, Jacob and Esau are introduced to us in utero, as we've heard. Even the pshat, the plain meaning interpretation of Torah, sees them not just as boys or brothers, but as ancestors, heads of competing nations. V'yitrotzetzu habanim b'kirba, v'tomer im kain lama ze anochi. But the children struggled in Rivka's womb, and she said, if so, why am I? Why do I exist? V'telech lidrosh et Hashem, and she went to inquire of the Lord. Vayomer Hashem la shnei goyim bevitnech, and the Lord answered her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 separate peoples shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Today's Haftarah makes clear that Esav is progenitor of the Edomites. Edom is a region east of the Jordan River marked with beautiful red mountains, hence to the literary allusion to Esav's red hair. But the Midrash understands this designation to be more nefarious. As Rashi, the 11th century commentator, expresses, why is Esav admoni? Why is he gingy? Siman hu sheyehe shofech damim. It's a sign that he would always be shedding blood. The Talmud and other rabbinic sources go further than this, equating Esav not simply with Edom, our ancient enemy to the east, but a more detestable oppressor from the west. In Masechet Gitin, in the Babylonian Talmud, we read a justification of the trickery performed against Esav by Yaakov, the theft of his blessing when Yaakov dresses up like his brother to charm their father. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav, it reads in Genesis 27, which the sages expound as follows. The voice, this is the cry stirred up by the Emperor Hadrian, caused the Jewish people to cry when he killed 600,000 on top of 600,000 in Alexandria of Egypt, twice the number of men who left Egypt. The voice of Jacob, this is the cry aroused by the Emperor Vespasian, who killed 4 million people in the city of Beitar, and some say he killed 40 million people. And the hands are the hands of Esav. This is the wicked kingdom of Rome that destroyed our temple, burned our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land. Are the numbers square? No, not really. They're intentionally hyperbolic. But make no mistake, the Roman Empire's treatment of the Jews under their dominion was dismissive and often cruel, which is exactly why I find the equation of Esav to Rome most unhelpful. Esav is not nearly as bad as Rome, and the caricature of evil he becomes in the Midrash isn't true to the source material. This is all the more true when our tradition makes the next interpretive leap, equating Esav with the next iteration of the Roman Empire and the oppression of our ancestors. Esav, as you could imagine, becomes Christianity. Now, I want to be clear here. On some level, I understand this need to create predictive analogs among biblical characters. We want Torah to make sense because the world, well, if you look around, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We want our ancestors and their antagonists to be about more than they were then, because then we have some visibility into why they and we are how they and we are now. But, Chevra, Christians have been both so much worse to us than Esav ever was, and Christians have been so much better to us than Esav ever was to Yaakov. And what's more, we can't draw a straight line from the behavior of Christians, certainly not all Christians, but even groups of Christians, to the tenets of Christianity. It's not that simple. They're interrelated, to be sure, but not the same. Just as we can't draw a straight line from the behavior of Jews, we know, to the tenets of Judaism. Sometimes I wish we could. There would be maybe fewer crab cakes in Pikesville. And that's just my point. Metaphors are useful until they're not. Biblical paradigms are helpful until they break down. The fire dance of biblical interpretation is thrilling and dangerous. Whirl and sway and juggle with care. Try not to get burned or to singe someone else in the process. But if I'm reticent about hermeneutical devices, interpretive devices, I'm much less ambivalent about drawing specious and awkward syllogisms between Judaism and its daughter religion, Christianity. This is not to say that they have nothing in common. They have much in common, of course, from ideas to values to pedigree. But to flatten them into one term is to rob each rich, beautiful, robust tradition of its texture, its relevance, and I think ultimately its appeal. My daughter and I are not Daniele. I'm Daniel. She's Ellie. We share a bunch of genes. I've taught her a thing or two. She's learned from me. I've learned from her. But we are two unique individuals, as are Shamir and I. Any parent who would want their child to be inextricable from them, to share a fundamental identity with them, instead of just their values or certain lessons, that person is probably not such a great parent. Any child who cannot differentiate between themselves and their folks probably needs to grow up a little bit. Heather Miller Rubens of the Institute for Islamic, Christian, and Jewish Studies here in Baltimore has argued that not exclusively, but especially with regard to American courts, the term Judeo-Christian, while intended to gesture toward religious inclusivity, works instead to support de facto Christian establishment. And in an essay he wrote when professor of religion and culture at Virginia Tech, Ben Sachs, now a Jewish scholar, or the Jewish scholar at the ICJS and a member of Beth Am, cites Heinrich Heine's 1824 poem entitled To Edom. As you can imagine, Heine is going to lean into that classical assignment of Esau, to Edom, and then to Rome and to Christianity to make his point. Heine writes, "Have we not tolerated one another already as brothers for a millennium and longer? You tolerate that I breathe. That you have become acerbated, I tolerate." Acerbated means exasperated or irate. I had to look it up too. But you may be wondering, why does Heine write this poem in the first place? He writes it having read Jacques Basnage's 1707 spurious History of the Jewish Religion from Jesus Christ to the Present. Ben points out that the work, while signaling an alignment between Judaism and Christianity, was actually, as Heine suspected, a renewed form of Christian supersessionism. That's the basic idea that the original Testament, that is the Hebrew Bible, has been superseded, replaced by the quote-unquote New Testament, an idea that found its way into many facets of Christianity and happily has found its way out of, in more recent years, many facets of Christianity. But here we are nearly 2 centuries after the poem To Edom, and we're still using that term, Judeo-Christian. I would argue there's no such thing. There's a lot of great material in the 2012 issue of Religere, which is the journal in which those essays from Ben Sachs and Heather Rubens Miller wrote, but allow me to share one more poem that Ben uses to make his point about the problems with the term Judeo-Christian. It's a translation of Robert Alter, by Robert Alter rather, of Yehuda Amichai's temporary poem, Sher Hazmani. It's just 4 lines. Here's how it goes. Hebrew and Arabic script go from east to west. Latin script from west to east. Languages are like cats. One must not go against the direction of the fur. These distinctions are all the more important, I think, on the Shabbat before Kristallnacht, when we Jews mourn the destruction of hundreds of synagogues, Torah scrolls, thousands of Jewish-owned businesses, the murder of 91 Jews, the deportation of 30,000 Jewish men to concentration camps, a pogrom that lasted over 2 days, marked a turning point in the Shoah, in the Holocaust. These distinctions are important during this time of the Unite the Right hate rally trial in Charlottesville. It's important to distinguish between Jews and others, between Judaism and other religions or traditions, because it's so very easy, I think, to get confused, to appropriate ideas or terminology, to lose ourselves in our ideas and our agency in the sickening tide of hate. Like when eminent Holocaust scholar Deborah Lipstadt, who testified at said trial, had her confirmation as special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism held up this week in the Senate over past tweets authored by the historian that were critical of some committee members. Mind you, these were not character assassinations. Lipstadt's tweets and comments were calling out anti-Semitism as she saw it, no matter the party or political designation. That's what she does. That's, kind of her thing. These were, however, the folks who were all hot and bothered by these tweets and comments, Christians, at least one Jew, who felt that they had the right to define anti-Semitism better than Lipstadt. My teacher, Yehuda Kurtzer, tweeted, "Blocking one of the world's leading scholars of anti-Semitism from a role to combat anti-Semitism because you think you know better is actually anti-Semitism." So, this Kristallnacht, this commemoration of that night of broken glass, which is really a euphemism, Beth Am will participate in an international initiative called Let There Be Light. Last year, thousands of houses of worship around the world illuminated their buildings to honor and commemorate the night of broken glass when synagogues burned. We'll be illuminating our sanctuary for all to see, but not, as the March of the Living website says, to unite the world against anti-Semitism, racism, intolerance, and hatred. Kristallnacht wasn't about racism, intolerance, and hatred of various kinds. Those things exist. Those things are horrific. They need to be responded to. They are, of course, interrelated with anti-Semitism in some ways, but Kristallnacht, the Holocaust, was about the hatred of Jews, the murder of Jews. They were done to us by Christians or by those who twisted the teachings of Christianity into the latest version of an ancient abomination called Jew hatred. Some Christians in the 1930s and 40s did otherwise. Too many participated in the slaughter of our people. Far too many did nothing. We don't have to denude or dilute that fact for November 9th and 10th to matter to others, I think, to matter to us. And if we do, perhaps we should ask ourselves a question. Are we placing too much faith in an ethic called Judeo-Christian and not enough faith in actual Christians and Christianity, and not enough faith in actual Jews and Judaism, and maybe not enough faith actually in God? Shabbat Shalom.